Welcome to my collection video number 2. Today we're going to delve into my Crewelwork embroidery collection. So what is Crewelwork? A question I get asked a lot actually. So basically Crewelwork is a surface embroidery traditionally done in woolen threads on a linen background. Now you may think you don't know what it is and you've never seen any before, but in fact the most famous embroidery in history is a piece of Crewelwork, and when I show you these 3 pieces you'll understand why I say that. So these are the characters from the Bayeux tapestry. So it's called a tapestry, it's not a tapestry, it's an embroidery, and here the chaps are, 3 of the characters from the tapestry. So we've got Wilhelm, we've got Guido, we know him as Guy, and Stigant. So Crewelwork embroidery. So let's have a little closer look at Stigant. So linen background, woolen threads on the surface of the linen. In the Bayeux tapestry time they didn't have many different stitches, so there may be a few in here that they didn't have. They did have a Bayeux stitch, which is why it's called Bayeux stitch, so that's the blue there and the red down here. So Crewelwork is a very old technique. This Bayeux tapestry is nearly 1,000 years old, so these would have been very typical of the colours that they used as well. You can see that surface embroidery there, how densely it's worked as well. So often dense areas of stitching with open areas as well, making up the design. So very famous piece of embroidery, very old piece of embroidery, so Crewelwork's got a very long history. So let's have a little closer look at some of the materials. So let's have a look at the fabric initially. So the good news about Crewelwork is you don't need many different things. The bad news is it is a little bit specialised. So this is what would have traditionally been used for the linen. So this is a linen twill. A twill means that it's got this diagonal weave going across it. I can show you that here on this camera. Very strong diagonal weave on it. It's quite rough. It's not a nice smooth finish, and this fabric is in fact quite a stiff fabric. It doesn't need a backing on it, and it's been woven this way for many generations. Very old technique of weaving. It comes in just this natural colour as well. You don't normally get it in different colours. So a natural colour, very stiff, no backing required, and this very strong grain. And the diagonal grain is on the right side, the side towards you. A little bit less prominent on the other side. You can still see it, but mainly the strong grain on the side towards you, which kind of goes a little bit against what you might think it is. So this is the traditional fabric that is used. This is the wool that's used. Now the wool has a very long history. I don't profess to be an expert, so I'll try and explain it as briefly as I can. So you may have heard of worsted wool or worsted wool. Comes from the village of Worsted in the English county of Norfolk, and they had sheep with very long coats, and the long coats, so the wool had a long staple, as it's called, and this made the wool a little bit stronger. So it's not the same as your average knitting wool, it's a little bit different. And you may have also heard of worsted fabric, so suits, a woolen suit would be made out of this particular wool. So it comes in hanks and it comes in skeins as well. And I just want to show you the difference between a crewel wool, so this is crewel, and this is tapestry wool. So you can see how thick the tapestry wool is compared to the crewel wool. So twice as thick really. Take that one away. So you can see that it's made up of 2-ply. I untwist it there. You can see, so 2-ply threads, so 2 different threads twisted together to make the thread that you can use. So it's much finer wool than a tapestry wool or a knitting wool. So 2-ply wool called crewel wool. Now they would have had something more like this in Bayeux tapestry times. So this is a hand spun, hand dyed crewel wool. This one happens to be from the mulberry dyer, and you can see the natural colours that they would have had as well. So very beautiful colours. Got pomegranate and onion skin and safflower and indigo in there. So again, this very fine 2-ply to the wool. So this is something similar to what they would have used then. And just for comparison, there's the same thing in a tapestry wool, so you can see how much thicker the tapestry wool is. So you can't really do crewel work in tapestry wool. It needs to be in crewel wool specifically, and it's not known really where the term crewel came from. They think it's to do with the staple of the wool, and might be a name associated with that, but nobody actually knows where that's from. Today we can have modern equivalents. So this is a wool and acrylic blend. It's about the same size as this hand spun wool here, and this is our Lana range that we sell, and it has the beautiful feeling of wool, a nice soft feel to it, but it's really strong because it's got the acrylic in it, so it doesn't break as wool tends to do. So nice and strong, and obviously you can get lots of beautiful colours now that we have synthetic dyes as well, so you've got a really great colour range. So a modern alternative if you wanted more colours. And then the other thing that you'll need is some needles, Crewel needles, conveniently named. They are quite wide, have quite a wide body on them, a point to go through the fabric, and a long eye to get the wool through them, and two sizes, sort of 5 and a 7. So 7 is a smaller one and 5 is a larger one, and they will make the hole for the wool to pass through so that you don't strip the wool. So that's quite important that you use the right needles. Okay, so now we've had a little look at what crewel work is, and we've had a look at materials. Let's look at a few pieces of crewel work from my collection. So this is Lincoln Castle. So I stitched this for a class at Lincoln Castle. I used to teach there at the skills centre there, and we had a one-day class in crewel work, and there was an anniversary of the Battle of Lincoln, and this is to commemorate that. So this is the castle. Here's the little Lincoln flag up here, and the little archer going, get out of my castle. So not on a traditional linen twill, but worked on actually a cotton linen blend here, but using traditional crewel wools and in a traditional style as well. So there's a little bayo stitch in here, some fairly simple stitches here, so a stem stitch, a little bit of satin stitch, some back stitch, and just using probably 4 or 5 stitches to create this fairly simple design, but in the traditional style of crewel work. So here's another piece that I did, another square one as it happens. So this piece I designed for some new apprentices. So when I was an apprentice at the Royal School of Needlework, we got to design a piece for the next year that was coming up that they were going to learn, and basically a stitch sampler within a design. So this is my design. So this is from a ceiling carving, a ceiling coffer, and again it's on linen. It's not on the traditional linen twill, it's on a linen which I've painted to look a little bit old, and it's got a bit of gold marbling through it as well. And I gave them the outline design, and they can interpret it any way they like, but I just did one of my own, just so to see what you could do with it really, and just try some different stitches out. So this has got quite a few stitches in it. We've got a buttonhole, got some bullion knots in the middle. These would not have been traditional stitches. These are more modern stitches, but just to show how you can use them in the old style. So a bit of long and short here, some woven and whipped wheels, bit of chain stitch, some satin around here, some French knots, and I've even just twisted a little bit of gold thread. You would never see gold thread in traditional crewel work, but I thought it looked quite nice. So that's my ceiling coffer. Okay, so you might have heard the term Jacobean or Jacobean crewelwork and wonder what the difference is. So Jacobean crewelwork is from the time of King James I, very popular in the 17th century, named so Latin for James, Jacobus or Jacobus, Jacobean, so Jacobean crewelwork. So Jacobean is a type of crewelwork, but it's more about the style of the crewelwork. So different patterns. I'll show you the easiest way to explain it. So here's a couple of really simple ones. So stylized plants and flowers, often based on the tree of life, which came over from the east. So they were very exotic plants and animals. So you might see things that are quite surprising for that century. Swirling trees and tendrils and big leaves and strange birds that you've never seen in animals and little hills. So it's the style of the crewelwork that denotes its Jacobean crewelwork. So here's some very simple ones, just a simple daisy shape. No, it's a daisy, but it's not like a daisy that you would see. It's not a realistic daisy. On a linen background in crewels. In a couple of different stitches, more modern stitches. Again, these ones wouldn't necessarily have been used in those times, but using traditional colours as well. So natural dyes, nothing too loud and bright because they didn't exist at that point. So a little daisy there, nice simple one, and a little flower spray as well. So again, you can see, no, it's a leaf, but it's a very stylised leaf. Little tendril, they like the little tendrils. Some other leaves here and a flower shape. Again, no discernible flower, but a flower shape. So very simple versions of Jacobean style crewelwork. These two designs are free on my website if you want to have a go at them. I'll put a link below. You can download those from there. So let's look at something a little bit more complicated now. So this is my Turako design. So a Turako is an African bird. This is him here. And I actually drew this bird. I wanted to study him and see what he was like in real life. So I went and drew him. We've got one in a local butterfly centre down the road. Beautiful birds, very inquisitive, so they like to hang around and you can have a good look at them. And then I stylised him into this here. So his defining feature, he's got this sort of red part on the top of his head and a bright yellow beak and these beautiful blue and green plumage. So you can tell he's a Turako, but he's not a realistic Turako, so very stylised, and some flowing leaves and a bit of stem. Everything often appears with a bit of stem from the tree of life, so there's usually some sort of structure of plant in there, and just perched him on the tree. The space is often quite important in Jacobean style crewelwork. The spaces are important as the stitching, they're not all filled in. You won't really find a piece that's totally filled in. So very stylised plants and animals. Now I wanted to show you this piece because this piece is a piece that I made for this book. So this is the Victoria and Albert Museum's book, Embroidery Maker's Guide, and I did some of the projects in here. It's my little dragonfly on the front, and here is the very one to size as well. Look at that, just replace that. So this is traditional Jacobean crewelwork. And I just flip the page back. This is the piece that was inspired by. So this is in the collection. It's a work bag. It says 1701 to 1702. Linen and cotton embroidered with crewel wool. So I like these little raspberries and these weird shaped leaves. Sort of lots of branches coming out, different flowers, not necessarily discernible what kind of flowers they are. So very stylised Jacobean crewelwork. And here's mine. So I took my little raspberry, took some of the leaves and the colours. I like the traditional colours, but I've made a modern piece out of it. So this is a mobile phone case. And if you want to work this project, it is in the book. got all the instructions in there and the design template as well, so that's in there if you want to have a go. So that's my traditional Jacobean Crewelwork mobile phone case. Right, I wanted to show you this piece because this is a traditional style, but this is using modern materials. So we've got a linen background here, but it's just a plain woven linen, and this is using the modern Lana thread. So this is the wool acrylic blend. So this is our distance learning class, and this was designed for people who want to learn Crewel embroidery, and sometimes when you're learning you need a little bit of help on the way. So the wool is easy to use, it's stronger, it's a little bit smoother when it goes through the fabric, and sometimes expensive materials, the proper materials, can be a little bit off-putting. You think, oh no, I'm going to ruin it and I've only got one piece. So just working it on a normal linen, which is easy to get, takes a bit of that fear away. So I've done it in a traditional Jacobean Crewelwork design. So here's my mad plant with my crazy leaves and weird tendrils and flowers and stuff, little hills going on, and a little animal in it. They often had animals in it. This little deer has appeared a lot in my sketchbook, so he was bound to arrive in something. So he's springing into spring, and I've used sort of fairly traditional colours. The purple and the pink not so much, but the brown and the green, keeping it traditional and just adding a little pop of colour throughout, and lots of different stitches to try because this is about learning the technique. So I've got quite a few different stitches in there, and shading is also, I haven't talked about that, but shading is quite an important part of Crewelwork, and a good way to make something look three-dimensional. So you would often only get a few colours in it, but lots of different shades, so a dark green and a light green, a dark brown and a light brown, and the same with the purples, and it's those darks and lights that make something look a little bit more three-dimensional. So the last piece I want to show you from my collection is actually the first piece of Crewelwork that I did, and that was on the apprenticeship with the Royal School of Needlework. It was the second piece I ever stitched there, and this is it. So traditional Jacobean Crewelwork, so the stylised design from the Tree of Life. So here's the tree, the oversized leaves, the exotic birds, some flowers in there. It's worked on the traditional linen twill. You can see the grain of it going right across there in traditional Crewel threads, Crewelwork threads in the 2-ply thread. And we had to learn all about Crewelwork and sort of to practice some stitches. So there's lots of different stitches in this design. I have to admit it's not my favourite, and because, the reason I say that is because if I knew then what I know now, I would have made a lot of things different, but that's called the learning process, and if I didn't know more now than I knew then, I haven't learned anything. And we didn't have long to design these pieces, so it's kind of take a bird from here and a leaf from there and put it together and make a design. So I have actually redesigned this piece since, and I may stitch that in another video. We'll see how that goes. So the design's okay, but I think I would have liked to have made it more of my own design, really. I'm not too happy with the colours either. I might have chosen some different colours, but you know, you live and learn. So some different stitches. So you would have started at the back normally and work your way forward. So the stem was first. So this is a raised stem band all the way up here. So would have worked that first. It's got some trellis in the leaves up here. Just about trying some different stitches while still trying to keep that balance of closed areas and solid areas. It was never filled in solidly. You would always see some of the fabric behind. Some French knots in here, some stem stitch rows, some fly stitch, some satin stitch here. I'm quite pleased with this little bit here, this little flower. Some block shading, some whipped wheel, half a whipped wheel here, looking on this camera, and some French knots, a bit of long and short in there, some coral stitch, so quite a lot of stitches going in there, but you can see the use of the different shades of the colours here that I talked about earlier. So a light red into a dark red into the green, we've got light medium and dark yellow as well, and then sort of maybe a highlight colour of the red around the edge. So those shades are quite important in traditional Jacobean crewel work to get these three-dimensional effects. So there's my Jacobean crewel work piece there, and some other pieces from my collection. I hope you've enjoyed this little tour through my box of goodies. Maybe this has inspired you to try some crewel work or some Jacobean crewel work of your own. We've got some free designs on the website. I've got loads of other videos, so go and check those out. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up, and leave some comments if you've had a go yourself. You might like to tell us what you've made in this style. And thanks for watching, and see you next time.